Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey everybody, this is the Digital Asset Investor, and my 8-year-old, my friend's son, who's the 8-year-old NASCAR whisperer, he picked me a winner again. He picked the guy that won the race. I won. I told him, I said, go ahead and get ready. I need 5 picks for next Sunday. I don't know anything about NASCAR, but I know this kid's obsessed. Hilarious. This morning I was looking through the things on the platform, who is one of my sponsors, by the way, and who does have a link in the top of the description of this video, by the way. They've got so many different things you can invest in now, but we've still got Ripple sitting up there, and I got to thinking, I hadn't brought it up in a little while, but I was wondering, and I actually tweeted about it, because we haven't heard, it's all quiet, and I don't know if you remember, when the SEC lawsuit dropped on Ripple, Tetragon, who was one of their early investors, sued Ripple. And the reason they sued them is they had a clause in when they purchased shares in Ripple. And the clause basically said, if XRP is determined to be a security, then you'll have to pay us the money. Well, they lost, as I recall, they lost their, the judge, I don't remember if the judge threw it out or what, but they basically lost, and the judge basically said, as I recall, well, it hasn't been determined that XRP is a security, there's just a lawsuit going on. Well, of course, as we know, later XRP is declared not a security. Then, even in this appeal, that's the interlocutory appeal that's being discussed, Jeremy Hogan said, it's not being appealed whether XRP itself is a security or not. That is not on appeal. So that's not even being challenged in this interlocutory appeal. And my point in saying all that is, the skies are blue for a Ripple IPO. There's not any reason not to go IPO. Now, the IPO market itself has been slow, but Ripple is just the kind of company that could lead the way into the next IPO market. You could see, I mean, they could ignite the whole IPO market. So I said, when IPO Ripple, where IPO Ripple, Brad Garlinghouse. And then here's a thought. This is a clip that Digital Perspectives, Brad Combs put out. This is from a while back where Chris Larson made a little trip to London.
The focus of this trip, though, is money.
Good to see you.
Next stop, a billionaire round table.
So Silicon Valley, London have a lot in common.
Fair to say these tech big hitters could lose $1 million down the back of the sofa and barely notice. The aim? To prize investments away from the Bay Area and over to its biggest tech competitor, Silicon London. The view may be more spectacular, but in truth, more and more venture capital has been flowing London's way in recent years. And the mayor promises as more and more investment comes, tens of thousands of jobs will follow.
London IPO. There's Ripple's sign right there on the runs on Ripple. I've been over to London 2 or 3 times in my life. And one thing they say when you go down in the underground, which is what they call their subway, you'll hear this voice over and over and over going, mind the gap. I guess the gap is the gap between the train and the train and the lip there between the train and getting off the train. But check this out. This is Raoul Pal, because we're talking about London this morning.
The UK says, forget it, we'll do it. It became what's known as the Eurodollar market, which is the overseas market for dollar borrowing and lending. That becomes we don't know the size of it, but let's call it a $400 trillion market.
Whoa.
And then the US, then we get this big breakthrough in derivatives. The US has got the Chicago Board of Trade doing futures and options and all of this stuff. But we start to figure out more complicated structures, things like swaps.
Swaps, derivatives.
And the US stops its banks doing it by its use of regulatory capital. They're like, no, this is inefficient. You can't do this. The UK and Europe went, well, we're going to regulate and allow it to happen because it's big. We've seen this before. That becomes a $quadrillion market.
Jesus.
That's why every single bank from about 1985, well, particularly after the Big Bang in London, so let's call it from about 1990 to about 2008, 2010, all the major banks' largest operations were London. So Goldman Sachs' biggest operation, most profitable, London. Merrill Lynch, London. Merrill Lynch is different because it was a brokerage firm. But JP Morgan, they were all London. So London, if you've been watching the news, is going to do the same thing. It's called regulatory arbitrage. London is putting together a very sensible set of crypto rules.
While at the same time, the US is going after Ripple.
As has Europe, as has Switzerland, as has Singapore, as has Hong Kong, as has Australia. Okay, there's its old trading group that it did with Eurodollars and it did with derivatives and it did with foreign exchange, all got their regulations in place. The UK is the hub at the middle and it will capture the lion's share. And before you know it, Coinbase, Gemini and everybody will move to London.
Ah, sure looks like that's what's happening. Here's another picture of Ripple in London. They have a London office, by the way, for those of you that don't know. And by the way, let's give a shout out to Riz XRP. You need to go follow this guy's at RIZXRP. And he's been putting out some, I'm assuming it's a he's been putting out some great videos lately around XRP. Check this one out. This is Carolyn Bowler from Australia.
What's happened with the SEC, right? And a U.S. judge finding that XRP is not a security when it came to mass retail, but when it was sold to institutional participants, it was considered a security. So these nuances coming out of the U.S., do they have influence on jurisdictions like Australia? When you take a look at that, does that have a precedent-setting impact? How do you, as industry leader, and how does Australia, from a legal perspective, view a ruling like that?
I think it's influential in the sense that, of course, what the SEC does is influential around the world. And you would, any regulator or legislator is going to look at what they do and take it into consideration. But their decision that XRP is not a security, I think, mirrors what we saw out of Japan years ago, where they said it wasn't a security. And certainly here in Australia, it didn't match up with the local test around what a security was for XRP. You can't retrofit a lot of what we saw in traditional finance into crypto because of the fact that this is so new, and there is then that opportunity for nuance, which nobody really wants, like, apart from lawyers perhaps, but certainly anybody who's running a business doesn't want there to be any legal nuance. You want that clarity. For me, certainly sitting here in Australia, I look at what the UK is doing very closely. Australia looks very closely at the UK anyway. There's obviously the historical connections between the two countries, but from what I can understand, there is a lot of a very close relations between the two from a government and regulatory point of view. But I also think with the UK, they've got a history of taking on opportunities in financial services and really making something of it. We're certainly the Big Bang and et cetera, et cetera. And so there is a lot of very, very smart people in the UK, in and around London, in the financial services who are absolutely working on what will be probably the next big thing. Even though there's something outside of Europe now, I still think that their impact will be felt across the European Union and certainly across into the US and hopefully here.
All righty. And then here she is again. I want to remind you all of Wade Ripple from the show with Wade Ripple and Ember Lumen, I believe it was called. Liquidity waiting on the sidelines for opportunities in crypto. XRP is water.
But what was also really interesting on Friday, where we saw the XRP announcement, was the rush of liquidity that came on the exchange. So what that told me is that there was a number of participants, and particularly retail, who were sitting on the sidelines and waiting. And so there are perhaps pockets within the economy here locally where they have got some.
You know what that reminds me of? Wasn't there somebody that came out of London Swell that said that somebody at Ripple told them that Bank of America was waiting on the sidelines for the lawsuit to be over?
Liquidity that's
for
sitting,
XRP to have clarity,
waiting for opportunities, either in crypto where they saw that particular movement and they thought, okay, this is a position we want to trade on, or else that they're hoarding their cash, waiting for the rest of the cycle to play through. I suspect that in other Western/developed nations, that's probably what we're going to see, play out. I certainly get the feeling locally is that, we're starting to really feel the impact of both the interest rate increases and really starting to feel the pinch in terms of prices. It's really starting to hit here. And I think that the rest of this calendar year, we're certainly going to feel that hit businesses and hit bottom lines. For us in crypto, though, we're kind of contrary to those markets, because the expectation is with the Bitcoin halving expected in April of next year, generally what that's meant is that in the build-up, we see the increase in action, the increase in price movement. And then from kind of April onwards, the expectation certainly is that we'll enter into another bull cycle. We'll wait and see how much all of that plays through, but also we'll also see the size of that, because what's also going to come into play, and what hadn't in prior cycles, is far more of that institutional money is going to be there.
Oh yeah. Even though XRP technically has nothing to do with Bitcoin, make no mistake that halving, as we head towards that, I believe that this is what I think all these Wall Street guys and institutional guys are looking at it going, we're going to ride this next wave. I believe this one, the next run, could be the biggest of all. Check this out from Crypto Insight UK. This is the first time we've seen this for XRP in 5 years. XRP Bitcoin on the monthly time frame has reclaimed the 20 and 50 SMA. Not only this, but it has also wicked back to the 50 SMA to test its support if we continue to hold out the month. The last time we saw a bullish claim of these two SMAs on the monthly time frame was 2017, the biggest bull run in XRP history. Will history repeat itself? And here's his little charts. And I have no idea what he was talking about, but I hope he's right, because this was an article done on it. And it says XRP's reclaimed this, and it says for the first time since the biggest bull run that saw it appreciate 66,400% in 2017. I was there. I remember looking at my phone and saying, what in the world is going on? And then down here it says XRP repeats historical pattern after 5 years that resulted in 15,400%. Which is it? I'm going to go with this one for my thumbnail. How about that? Now, this is a pretty interesting little clip. I'm not going to play the whole thing. I'm going to skip this. This guy is talking about Sullivan Cromwell and how they basically send in Sullivan Cromwell to do, basically, to change governments' minds and to change, basically alter the path of governments. And I said, well, it makes you wonder what Jay Clayton was tasked with doing when he came to the SEC, because he came from Sullivan Cromwell and then went right back to Sullivan Cromwell. I have my ideas. Now, poor Warren Davidson is off on the wrong path. And I'm going to say this. I agree with Warren Davidson that CBDCs can be used for really evil purposes. I agree with him. Here's where we depart. I believe this is where we're going no matter what Warren Davidson says. You're not going to be able to make it illegal. If you did, you're going to have countries around the world that are doing it, and then the U.S. won't be doing it. It'll be weird, and it won't work. But here's the thing. I do believe that our Congress should make laws that put a harness around any CBDC that's created, and basically outline a Bill of Rights of sorts to say, these are the things that cannot be done because these would infringe on people's rights. I agree with him on this, okay? But what I don't agree with is CBDC in and of itself is evil. It's evil if it's done for evil purposes, just like any technology. I use the example of a nuclear bomb. Nuclear bomb can either blow up a city, or you can use nuclear energy to power a city. So this idea, I mean, and even, and he did, after we brought it up, he did throw consensus in there. He's not just saying here he's saying tokenized assets are not the problem. It's the people. Entities, including Federal Reserve, Ripple, Consensus, and influencers are actively working on CBDC projects. So he's throwing everybody in the same boat. Okay. Well, this is my other problem. He's not going to call for an investigation of ETHgate, where we already have the video, timelines, and proof of everything that already actually happened that was a crime. He's not concerned with those kind of things that hurt the people. And so until he does call for an investigation, then talk. You know, I want to know why is he so worried about protecting Ethereum? That's what I want to know. Look at this. This is not creepy at all. Hashtag sarcasm. WorldCoin. It's a silver orb outfitted with eyeball scanning cameras intended to distinguish humans from machines in an era of ever developing artificial intelligence. Yeah, that's extremely creepy. Now, as far as I know, this is a total rumor right now, until I see a legit article on it, but it's still interesting. Breaking: SEC Commissioner Hester Peirce is being considered to replace Gary Gensler as the head of the regulatory agency. I'll believe it when I see it. I'm the digital asset investor. I'm not an investment advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. Please subscribe, hit the like button, tell your friends and family that we hope this is not a rumor. Of course, Hester Peirce, I don't completely trust her either. She could have blown the whistle on this whole thing a long time ago. And we have proof now that she had meetings with those people from ETHgate that were meeting behind closed doors for what eventually became the Hinman speech. That came out of the Freedom of Information Act request from Empower, that she had a meeting. It was somewhere in one of those emails that she had a meeting with those people from like Andreessen Horowitz and Union Square Ventures too. So she knew what was going to happen. Thanks for listening.